I don't remember a time when my mother loved me. Not in the way other mothers loved their children. In our village, love was loud. Mothers called their daughters by pet names, laughed with them at the river, pulled them close when danger passed too near. But in my home, love was silent, or maybe it never lived there at all. My earliest memory of my mother is not her holding me, but her pulling her hand away. I was barely old enough to walk when I reached for her leg and felt her tense, as if my touch burned her. She didn't yell. She didn't strike me. She simply stepped back, eyes sharp, jaw tight, as though I had crossed an invisible line. From that day on, I learned something without being taught. I was not welcome in her arms. As I grew older, the distance didn't close. It hardened. My mother fed me, clothed me, made sure I survived, but survival was all she ever offered. Affection never crossed her face. Praise never left her mouth. When I cried, she watched me with impatience, not concern. When I smiled, she looked away, almost offended by my joy. Sometimes, when she thought I wasn't watching, I saw fear in her eyes. Fear, and something darker. Resentment. The other women in the village noticed it too. They would pull me aside at the well and whisper gentle things, as if trying to fill a space my mother refused to touch. She's strict, they said carefully. She carries heavy burdens. Some women don't know how to show love. But even as a child, I knew that wasn't the truth. Strictness still has warmth. Burdened women still soften in private. My mother never softened. She spoke to me like a guard speaks to a threat, always alert, always tense, always prepared for something to go wrong. My father was different. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't kind either. He lived in the space between silence and absence. In the evenings, he sat near the fire, staring into the flames as if searching for something he had lost long ago. When I spoke, he listened. When my mother spoke, he obeyed. And when the tension between us thickened the air, he lowered his eyes and said nothing. I used to believe he was weak. Now I know he was afraid. Afraid of my mother's anger. Afraid of what she carried inside her. Afraid of a past that clung to him like a shadow. There were rules in our house that didn't exist in others. I wasn't allowed to ask about my mother's childhood. I wasn't allowed to enter the ancestral hut alone. I wasn't allowed to question why my mother avoided certain elders. And most of all, I wasn't allowed to ask why she looked at me the way she did. Because when she looked at me, something in her broke. It happened most clearly when my father and I shared a moment. If he laughed at something I said, if he rested his hand on my shoulder, my mother's face tightened. Her fingers clenched. Her breathing changed. Once, when I was still young, I ran to my father after he returned from a long journey. I wrapped my arms around him, laughing, happy. My mother watched from across the yard. Her face drained of color. That night, she beat me for the first time. Not hard enough to leave marks where others could see, but hard enough that I learned a lesson deeper than pain. I learned that my closeness to my father made her furious. From then on, I kept my distance. I learned to move quietly. To speak softly. To disappear when she entered a room. But no matter how careful I was, her anger found me. Sometimes it came without warning, a harsh word, a sudden slap, a punishment that didn't fit the crime. Other times, it came in silence, days where she refused to speak to me, eyes filled with something that felt like hatred mixed with terror. I never knew which was worse. What hurt the most was that she loved my older sister. Or at least, she didn't hate her the way she hated me. My sister stayed across the compound, close enough to see but far enough to feel unreachable. When my mother spoke to her, her voice changed. Not gentle, but familiar. Like two people bound by something unspoken. I noticed it early. The way my mother's anger softened into anxiety around her. The way arguments between them felt heavier than normal fights. They weren't fighting like mother and daughter. They were fighting like people who shared a secret too large to carry alone. And when I was near them, the air grew dangerous. My mother often warned me. Stay away from her. She never said why. Just that one sentence, sharp and final. When I asked questions, her answers cut like knives. You don't understand. You're too young. Some truths destroy families. That last one stayed with me. Because what kind of truth could destroy a family unless the family was already broken? I tried, for years, to earn her love. I worked harder than other girls. I woke earlier. I spoke less. I obeyed faster. Nothing changed. Love, I learned, is not something you can bargain for. One evening, during a village celebration, I watched mothers dance with their daughters beneath the firelight. Laughter filled the air. Drums echoed through the night. My mother stood apart from it all, watching. For a moment, I thought I saw longing in her eyes. I took a step toward her. She turned sharply, her face hardening instantly. Don't, she said. Just one word. But it landed like a blow. That was the moment I stopped trying. I didn't know why she hated me. I didn't know what I represented to her. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. My mother did not see me as her daughter. She saw me as a reminder. Of what, I didn't yet understand. But I would. And when the truth finally came, it would change everything I believed about love, family, and the woman I once called mother. As I grew older, I began to understand something unsettling about my village. Silence was not emptiness. Silence was protection. There were questions no one asked. Stories no one finished. Names that caused voices to drop and eyes to turn away. And slowly, painfully, I realized that my family lived at the center of that silence. It started with the elders. In our culture, elders were the keepers of truth. They decided disputes, preserved lineage, and guarded the stories of those who came before us. When they spoke, the village listened. When they remained silent, no one dared to push. But whenever my mother's name surfaced, even by accident, the elders changed. Their backs stiffened. Their eyes hardened. Their voices shortened. I noticed it first during a seasonal gathering beneath the baobab tree. Families sat in wide circles, elders in the center, discussing marriages and lineage. When one elder mentioned my father's household, another interrupted him sharply. That matter is closed, he said. Closed. I didn't even know what the matter was. Later that day, I asked my aunt what he meant. She froze mid-motion, grinding grain with a stone. Her hand stopped moving. You ask too many questions, she said quietly. Some answers cost more than curiosity. That was the first time I realized the elders weren't simply unaware of my family's past. They were guarding it. The older women were worse. They spoke in fragments, in half-sentences that never connected fully. When I entered a room, conversations ended. When I left, they resumed in hushed tones. Once, while fetching water, I heard two women arguing softly near the well. She should never have been allowed, one began. Hush, the other cut in sharply. The elders decided. My heart pounded as I stepped closer, pretending not to listen. Decided what? I asked, my voice shaking. Both women turned to me at once, eyes wide with fear, not guilt. Fear. One of them grabbed my arm. Go home, she whispered urgently. And don't repeat what you hear. That fear followed me everywhere. It lived in the way elders avoided my gaze. In the way men lowered their voices when my father passed. In the way my mother avoided gatherings that required lineage records or ancestral recitations. She never joined ceremonies that honored bloodlines. She never stood before the elders unless summoned. And when she did, she bowed deeper than anyone else. Not out of respect. Out of submission. The ancestral hut was the center of it all. Every family had one, a sacred place where lineage was recorded, where births and unions were acknowledged, where rituals of truth were performed. As children, we were taught to treat it with reverence. But my mother treated it like a wound. She avoided walking past it. She forbade me from entering it alone. And whenever elders mentioned ceremonies held inside, her breathing changed. Once, during an initiation season, my name was called to participate. My mother refused. "She's not ready," she said quickly. The elder frowned. At her age, she should already know. My mother lowered her eyes. "Please." That single word, "please," from a woman who never begged for anything, unsettled everyone. The elders exchanged glances. Finally, one of them nodded. "Very well," he said. "But the truth waits for no one forever." That night, I confronted my father. He sat by the fire as usual, staring into the flames. I stood in front of him, heart racing. "Why won't Mother let me enter the ancestral hut?" I asked. His jaw tightened. "She believes it's safer this way." "Safer from what?" He didn't answer. I stepped closer. "Everyone knows something about our family. Something they won't tell me." His hands trembled slightly. "Some knowledge," he said slowly, "cannot be unlearned." That was the moment I understood something critical. My father knew the truth. My mother lived inside it. And the elders were its gatekeepers. The secret revealed itself in pieces, like bones surfacing after a flood. An old midwife once looked at me for too long and whispered, "You look like someone who never got to choose." An elder, drunk on palm wine, muttered, "That girl exists because we allowed it." Another woman said, almost kindly, "Your life was negotiated." Negotiated. I lay awake many nights replaying that word. What kind of birth needs negotiation? What kind of mother carries a truth so heavy it turns love into violence? And why did the elders, men sworn to truth, choose silence instead? The answer became clearer with time. The elders didn't hide the truth because it was confusing. They hid it because it was forbidden. Something had happened that broke ancestral law. Something that threatened lineage, honor, and the moral order of the village. And instead of destroying it, they buried it. Along with everyone it touched. One evening, I overheard my mother arguing with an elder outside our compound. "You promised me it would never surface," she hissed. The elder's voice was low but firm. "We promised you protection, not peace." "And what about her?" my mother demanded. "What happens when she finds out?" The elder was silent for a long moment. "Then the truth will do what it always does," he said. "It will demand payment." My mother let out a sound I had never heard before, a broken, animal cry. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from gasping. They were talking about me. That was when I understood the full shape of the lie I was living inside. My childhood had been carefully designed. My ignorance had been maintained. My questions had been controlled. Not because I was fragile, but because I was dangerous to the story they built. I wasn't just a daughter. I was evidence. Evidence of something the elders chose to erase. And the closer I came to the ancestral hut, the closer I came to adulthood, the harder it became for them to keep the truth sealed. The elders could delay revelation. But they couldn't stop it. Because truth, like blood, always finds its way back to the surface. And soon, it would reach me. The truth did not arrive gently. It didn't knock. It didn't warn me. It waited until I was strong enough to survive it, and then it shattered everything I thought I knew. The night I finally entered the ancestral hut alone, the village was silent. No drums. No laughter. Even the dogs slept as if they knew this was not a night meant to be disturbed. The door was heavier than I expected. The wood felt old beneath my palms, rough with age and memory. When it opened, the smell inside stopped me cold of dust, smoke, dried herbs, and something else I couldn't name. Something heavy. Something buried. This was the place my mother feared. The place the elders guarded. The place where my life truly began. Inside, the fire pit was cold, surrounded by stones darkened by decades of rituals. Carved symbols lined the walls, marks of lineage, unions, births, and oaths. But one section had been scratched over, as if someone tried to erase it. My hands trembled as I touched the markings. That was when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned slowly. My mother stood in the doorway. She didn't shout. She didn't run. She looked tired. "Took you long enough," she said quietly. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us felt thicker than any argument we had ever had. "You weren't supposed to come here alone," she finally said. "You weren't supposed to hide my life from me," I replied. Her shoulders sagged. For the first time in my memory, she didn't fight back. "I wanted to protect you," she whispered. "No," I said. "You wanted to protect the lie." That word, lie, seemed to drain what little strength she had left. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. "There are truths," she said slowly, "that destroy everyone they touch." "Then tell me," I said. "Let it destroy us honestly." She stared at the floor for a long time. When she finally looked up, her eyes were wet, not with anger, not with fear, but with something close to relief. "I was never supposed to be your mother," she said. The words landed, heavy and final. My heart began to race. "What do you mean?" I asked, though some part of me already knew. She swallowed hard. "In this family, in this house. I was meant to be raised as a daughter. A sister. Not a wife." The air left my lungs. She continued, voice shaking but steady. "Your father was already grown when I was still considered a child by our laws. The elders knew. Everyone knew. But they also knew what would happen if the truth came out." I felt dizzy. "So they chose silence," she said. "They chose to rewrite the story." My knees weakened. I leaned against the wall to stay upright. "You should have been my sister," I whispered. Her face crumpled. "Yes." The word echoed in the hut like a final judgment. She pressed her palm against her chest, as if trying to keep herself together. "They told me that if I accepted the role of wife, the shame would disappear. That the ancestors would be appeased. That no one would ever speak of it again." "And you believed them?" I asked. "I had no choice," she said. "I was already trapped. I thought of every moment of cruelty. Every slap. Every cold look. Every night I cried alone." "Is that why you hated me?" I asked. Her voice broke. "I didn't hate you," she said. "I hated what I became because of you." The words cut deeper than anything she had ever done to me. "You were proof," she continued. "Proof that the lie worked. Proof that the elders were right. And every time I looked at you, I saw the life I was never allowed to live." I closed my eyes. "And my sister?" I asked quietly. She stiffened. "She knew," my mother said. "She was old enough to understand what was happening. She saw the way the elders changed the story. She saw the way I disappeared into a role that was never meant to be mine. Why make me hate her? I demanded. My mother's hands shook. Because if you loved her, she whispered, you might listen to her. And if you listened, you would learn the truth. The room felt like it was closing in. At that moment, the door opened again. My sister stepped inside. She didn't look surprised. She looked relieved. I knew this day would come, she said softly. She turned to me. I tried to protect you, she said. But I couldn't keep lying to you anymore. I looked between them, the woman who raised me with resentment, and the sister I was taught to fear. My whole life, I said, voice shaking, was built on a secret that should never have existed. Yes, my sister replied. But you don't have to carry it anymore. My mother sank to the floor, covering her face. I wanted you to be free, she sobbed. I just didn't know how. I stood there, surrounded by the truth, my past unraveling at my feet. I realized then that my mother wasn't born cruel. She was shaped by silence. By fear. By a lie that swallowed her identity. And I was born into its aftermath. I took a deep breath. I won't live inside this anymore, I said. They both looked at me. I won't hate her, I continued, nodding toward my sister. And I won't let what happened define who I become. The fire pit crackled suddenly, as if responding to my words. I stepped toward the door. Where are you going? My mother asked, voice trembling. To live a life that wasn't negotiated, I replied. As I walked out of the ancestral hut, the night air felt different, lighter, cleaner. The truth hurt. But it also freed me. Because the day I learned my mother should have been my sister was the day I stopped carrying a shame that was never mine.